Now that we know a little bit about positioning, let's take our page and give it a 2-column layout. That is, I have a content div that has all of this text and some images, and I also have an author info area that is currently in the flow of the document, so it appears at the bottom of the page. What I'd like to do is take this author info and put it on the top left, and then have all of the content on the right-hand side of the page, and it looks like there's 2 columns coming down the page. So to do this, we're going to use styles. The first thing I'll do is come into the body and just reset all the padding and margin so that we don't have to worry about that messing up any of our calculations. And then I'm going to take the author info, and what we're going to do is take it out of the normal document flow. So we know one way to do that is to give it an absolute position, and let's say it's going to be absolutely positioned from the top by 5 pixels and from the left by 5 pixels. And if I save this and refresh, we now have about the author in the top left where I want it, but it's also overlaying the content area. We'll fix that in just a bit. Before we do that, I want to point out that it's often quite useful when you're trying to achieve some sort of specific layout to give your blocks some background color so it's very easy to identify them. So let's give author info a background color of yellow, and let's give the content area a background color of red. This is going to be very ugly, but it's also going to be temporary. And now I can see there's my author info block. One of the first things that jumps out is that I'm going to have to constrain the width of this so that content can appear on the right-hand side. I need to know exactly how wide that block is going to be. So let me go ahead and set the width to 300 pixels. One of the reasons I want that to be 300 pixels is because I know that this about the author is an image that has a width of 300 pixels. I want everything to match up. And now that I have author info under control, what I want to do is make sure that my content appears on the right-hand side of the page and that it's not overlapping or underlapping where the author information is. And the easiest way to do that is with a left margin. So I'm going to say margin to the left should be 310 pixels to make sure it's away from author info and also has a little bit of margin. And we refresh that, we can see that is now moved over there. Let's get rid of the colors and see how this looks. And that would be a 2-column layout. So any additional information that I add into the author info area, that would flow down here on the left-hand side of the document. Any additional information I add to the content area, that's flowing down here on the right-hand side of the page. If we wanted the About the Author section to appear on the right-hand side of the page instead of the left, then you can imagine that we can just flip around some of the work that we did in the last piece. So I can take the absolute positioning and apply it to the content, and then take the author info and push it to the right a certain number of pixels. Now the content typically is going to need a little more space than the author info does. So let's set this to 400 pixels, and then author info can be moved to the left, let's say 405 pixels. And now you see that the two have reversed themselves. But still the image bleeds over a little bit into that right-hand side area. So we'll have to be really careful with this particular type of layout and make sure that the images have enough space to display fully. And actually this looks like it's going to be maybe about 600 pixels over. So let's make the width 600 and set this to be 605 pixels. And that looks like we have more than enough space now actually. For the next layout trick, let's say that we wanted to take this bit of information, this H1 tag, the author name and the date, and make it into a header that spans across both columns across the top. In order to do this, I'm going to make a slight structural change. I'm going to have to pull out that H1 and the paragraph tag outside of the content div and put it into another div. So I'm going to create a div called header, paste that H1 and P inside of there. If we just do that and refresh the page, you can see that things are starting to overlap. So this is one of the things you'll get used to in CSS. What we see is that we have a header up top, and to make it easier to see, let me go ahead and say that a header has a background color of red, and we'll go ahead and set a background color on our content again. You can also use the developer tools to do this to some extent, but sometimes it's just easier if you can see it right there on the screen. So what's happening is we have the header here up top, that's in the flow of the document. The author info is fine because it's in the flow of the document. It's statically positioned. It's going to appear after that header. But the content area is not in the flow of the document. It's being absolutely positioned. So we're going to have to make sure that we absolutely position it so that it's not overlapping the header. One way to do that is to give our header a specific height so we know exactly down to the pixel how much space it's going to occupy. So that's going to be 100 pixels. And now I can come down to the top and say, I really want to push this part, this content area, down 115 pixels. And now that's looking a little bit better. Let's make it 120. And let's take the background colors off so that it doesn't hurt the eyes. And now I have an independent header. So inside of here I could say text align to the center. And that header sort of spans our two columns. It's appearing right in the middle of the page.